The Ndebe people liked fair and voluptuous women for their wives. They were a warrior tribe. They lived in a dry area where rains were scarce, so their land barely produced any food. Their cattle, any other livestock, would die of hunger. On top of that, they were kind of lazy to till their own land. Every year, just after the harvest, the Ndebe would go and raid from their faraway neighbors for cattle, grain, and fair women for themselves and their sons. After the young women had gathered their firewood and was about to carry them onto their head, they suddenly felt they were surrounded. A certain smell of a burning leaf was in the air. As they continued breathing, it made them weak. Everything it went dark, and they were easy meat for the raiders. Once upon a time, in a dazzling kingdom called Amaz, a place of beauty, high on a hill, surrounded by shimmering waters, the people of Ndebe were expert warriors, experts in firing arrows. Joy filled the air, and they loved each other deeply, sharing everything they had. One sunny day, all the village young women went to the forest to gather firewood. The forest was a bit spooky and not safe for just one person, for it was spring and the beginning of harvest time. The raiders could appear from anywhere, anytime. Everyone felt braver with each other. When the young women were about to carry firewood onto their heads, the raiders grabbed 3 fair women by the name of Mera, Abiya, and Kamwanda. Most of their mothers would have gone to the market. The other girls who had escaped ran and hid in the mountain cave. When the mothers returned from the market, the houses were ransacked and their cattle pens were empty. And they suddenly realized the raiders had been in the village, and the young women of the village nowhere to be found. This got everyone worried. The young women never stayed out late. They decided to check at each other's house to see if their daughters were there. But getting from house to house, their heart began to pound. The villagers cried all night. The night was really a long one. By the next morning, the villagers gathered together and set out for the forest to find any trace of where the young women could be, if they had managed to escape their captors. It was a dark day in the kingdom, and everyone mourned and cried so much and refused to be consoled. Meanwhile, the young women opened their eyes to find they were locked up in a dark room with chains on their hands and legs. They didn't know how they got there. They called their mothers, but no one answered. Then they began to recall their fight in the forest, how they felt someone was carrying them and running. They began to scream at the top of their voices, and soon the door opened. Very tall men entered. The young women soon realized their captors, as they had heard of the stories before. "Tomorrow is your marriage day," announced the leader of the raiders. 6 men will be put before you, and you have the chance to choose who you want to be your husband. After this, the men left, and a few older women come and to take care of the new arrivals. Luckily, among the women was Nina, a girl who had also been captured the previous harvest. That was kind of an assurance that they were not to be ill-treated, although their heart were beating fast and feeling anxiety. Whilst in the forest, the villagers started calling the names of the girls, without hope of ever seeing any one of them. Every villager with a somber look on their face kept forward, going deep into the deep of the still calling out the girls' names. It was when they reached a mountain cave, when they're howling more and more, that in their heart, that at least they were bodies, or the girls were hiding. Suddenly 5 girls came out of the cave, scared and tears running down. They shouted Mera, Abiya, and Kamwanda had been taken by the far neighboring village men. The villagers all huddled together and cried. What could they do? They didn't have a strong king and army to defend themselves. So every harvest, the villagers experienced this over and over. Thanks for watching. Watch out for part 2 of the story.